My 3 M's are minerals, micronutrients, and macronutrients. Now, I want to discuss this framework within two paradigms. I want to discuss the 3 M's as it relates to overall health, and then I'm going to discuss the 3 M's as it relates to specifically raising testosterone. Today, we are going to talk about how to boost your testosterone naturally. You're going to learn exactly what has to happen with your nutrition and your metabolism to make boosting testosterone naturally easy and effective and sustainable. This video will be worth your time if you want to get good at boosting your testosterone using diet, supplementation, training, and lifestyle habits. And if you don't know who I am Terrence Thomas, a high-performance health coach with over 35 years of experience in coaching athletes, executives, entrepreneurs. Consider me a Swiss Army coach. If you combine a strength coach combined with a physical therapist, clinical nutritionist, and life coach, put them into one tool, that's what you'll have with me. This is me at age 15. This is me at age 51. And the reason why I've been able to maintain this level of health and vitality is because of the principles that I'm about to share with you right now. So if you have not done so already, please like and subscribe, as it greatly helps me get this information out to more men like yourself. Let's dive in. So always, my mission for yourself and this channel is to help men like yourself achieve what I call maximum congruency, meaning that not only do I want you to be successful financially, not only do I want you to have the money, I want you to have the muscles and the mindset to dominate all aspects of your life so you become the best version of yourself. Now, if you haven't watched my first video on how to boost testosterone naturally, in part 1 of the training, what you would have learned was the importance of determining your fuel type and what to do to figure out what your personal fuel type is. So if you have not watched that video, you may want to do that either before you finish this or after you finish this, but that's going to help you tremendously in getting more benefit from what I'm about to show you here. Okay, so today we're going to dive into what supplements will help you boost testosterone and how to set up your supplement protocols to get the best results. Okay, just to reiterate, if you want to maximize your ability to boost testosterone and to be able to sustain your gains, then you must have the foundation in place, meaning you must build your nutrition reserves in order to match your vitality with the increase in testosterone. Let me say that again. You must match your vitality with the increase in testosterone. Remember, testosterone is an accelerant. It's like putting a turbo on your engine, okay? In other words, it enhances metabolism, nutrient uptake, and nutrient utilization. When testosterone goes up, you must be able to meet the corresponding nutritional demands of said boost. If you put a turbo on an engine without upgrading the cooling and lubrication systems, you'll essentially just speed up the rate at which you destroy your engine. Your body is essentially kind of like that when you increase testosterone. You have to have the corresponding nutrition on board to match the performance enhancing effects that testosterone ultimately does. This is even if you're low on testosterone, the same principle applies. There was a reason why your testosterone dropped, was because the supporting nutrients aren't there. So in the process of increasing your testosterone, you have to have the supporting nutrients for it to go back the other way. I hope that's making sense on a fundamental level. So what is it? This is how you make sure that your body and your metabolism can meet the demands of an increase in testosterone. So the framework that I'm going to share with you is my 3M framework for helping you make sure that those two entities match. My 3Ms are minerals, micronutrients, and macronutrients. Now, I want to discuss this framework within two paradigms. I want to discuss the 3Ms as it relates to overall health, and then I'm going to discuss the 3Ms as it relates to specifically raising testosterone, because they can be applied to both of these entities, okay? So to continue with the car analogy, if testosterone is the turbo, minerals are the spark plugs of the metabolism. Mineral deficiency and or mineral imbalance will zap your energy, shut down your metabolism, and your ability to boost testosterone. Minerals are the foundation of cellular function. If you don't have the right minerals on board, your cells are not going to function as efficiently. And I'll explain to you how important this is as we continue this chat. So here's how this works. As I discussed in the physical dominance blueprint video, if you haven't seen that video, that will be the other one that you would need to watch. Again, that's the physical dominance blueprint video. Okay. In that video, I explained to you that there are primary and secondary hormones. And basically the rule is this: primary hormones dictate the function and optimization of secondary hormones. Your primary hormones are insulin, cortisol, and adrenaline. Your secondary hormones are all of your sex hormones: testosterone, DHEA, pregnenolone, cortisol, progesterone, estrogen, and those hormones, okay? So again, minerals dictate the function of primary hormones, okay? So in other words, minerals are of immediate concern. The minerals that are of immediate concern are sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. These are what we call the big four minerals. The reason why that is because of their importance in overall metabolism, okay? So minerals, like these four minerals, control your primary hormones. Stay with me here, okay? So these are the big four minerals as I discussed, and they are considered the big four because of their importance in adrenal and thyroid function, which are the gatekeepers to primary hormone function. Sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. These are the four minerals that are directly responsible for energy production. Remember, everything in the metabolism is energy driven. If the spark plugs that control that process are non-existent or deficient, the metabolism can't get started, and here we are. So it's really important that you understand the importance of these big four. Again, sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. So let's now explain to you how we build these four high reserves. So before I get into how to build these reserves, one thing that I want you to understand about minerals is that mineral metabolism is not linear, meaning that just because you're low on something doesn't necessarily mean that you need it. And just because something is high in a test doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need it. Minerals are very fluid and dynamic. You have to understand how the minerals relate to your individual metabolism. This is why I've been doing hair tissue mineral analysis for close to 20 years now, because based on my training, I understood that there's another layer of accuracy and analysis that needed to happen in order to really dial in people, especially when they're coming off of an illness or trying to increase performance. So I'm taking this high level of knowledge to help you understand how you can apply it. So understand that the minerals themselves are not linear, and I'll explain to you how to chop up this particular logic and to apply it for your benefit here in a second. But I wanted you to understand that, okay? So when it comes to building for high reserves, I'm giving you 3 options that you can take to deal with this. Option number 1 is to approach this purely from a dietary perspective, meaning that you're going to take foods that contain sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, such as sea salt for sodium, potatoes for potassium, leafy greens for calcium, and things like almonds, black beans, quinoa, yogurt, cooked spinach for magnesium, just to give you an example. And then option 2 for building your 4 high reserves would be taking some type of supplementation, such as an electrolyte powder, mineral supplements as well. But just like I mentioned, minerals must be chelated correctly, or they could cause imbalances in calcium and magnesium specifically. Again, this is where understanding the science of minerals comes into place. And again, I can probably assume that most people aren't skilled and educated on the subtleties of mineral chelation, but I can tell you from clinical experience that it makes a difference. We're starting to get more wise to it, but just know that it does make a difference. Just like everyone's metabolism is unique, which means that every nutrient is going to affect your metabolism differently, okay? Just to throw that down the rabbit hole. So again, option 2, you can do supplementation, which is a viable option, but there is a bit of guesswork and a little bit of gap in accuracy that happens there, but nonetheless, it's still a viable solution. And then the third option would be to get your minerals tested by way of a hair tissue mineral analysis. And what this process does is it identifies your unique mineral imbalances, and it allows you for a more precise food and supplement protocol. And again, if you want more information or you would like to undergo this type of assessment, there should be a link somewhere in the description to be able to do that. So really important, but there's no way around not building, balancing, and making sure that those 4 high minerals are in place. Otherwise, your foundation for controlling your primary hormones are going to be dead in the water. And again, you can't have a secondary hormone or sex hormone or testosterone problem in the presence of a primary hormone dysfunction. So are you starting to understand now that the information that you're learning here is root cause and foundational information that is often overlooked for various reasons? So understand that there's no way around these steps. If you choose to ignore these steps, I can promise you, your results will always be like this, because you don't have a foundation. This is the alpha and omega of sustained and increasing performance. That's why my brand is called Maximum Vitality and not Mediocre Vitality. Okay. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. Okay. So now we go to micronutrients, which is the next tier up. You see, the foundation are the minerals, and now we move into the next tier, which are your micronutrients. Okay. So in this case, we have things like vitamin D that affects testosterone, and I'll get into that more specifically. Essentially, all the other vitamins as well, your B6s, your B complexes, and A's and K and things like that. And then we have zinc, selenium, boron. And again, you can meet these needs via food, broad supplementation, or targeted protocols via a hair tissue mineral analysis. Now, disclaimer, I understand that zinc, selenium, and boron are in fact minerals, but for classification and prioritization, we will consider zinc, selenium, and boron as second tier, and here's why. Because a deficiency in these minerals will not kill you fast, as opposed to sodium, potassium specifically that can kill you fast. So from a priority and a hierarchy perspective, these minerals are second tier. For example, you can't have a huge sodium and potassium imbalance. Otherwise, on the low end, you'll start cramping. On the high end, you'll go into full cardiac arrest. So from a functionality perspective, that's why those sodium and potassium, calcium, magnesium are a lower tier and higher priority mineral, which is why they're there. I hope that makes sense, okay? So now we can move on to the third M, which are macronutrients. And in this case, I'm using macro in a different context, okay? What macro means in this particular training is the larger or higher tier nutrients and compounds that aid in boosting testosterone, okay? So now that you understand how to best prioritize natural testosterone boosters, hang on, let me start that over again. So now at this point, basically we can get into the actual supplements and herbs that directly boost testosterone. Okay, now that we have that foundation in place, all right? So now we can talk about direct testosterone boosters. Let's talk about the most common one now that's been proven to work, and that one is Tongat Ali. We know that Tongat Ali can increase free testosterone, lower sex hormone binding globulin, and the typical dose is going to be around 400 milligrams a day, preferably in something that's organically grown. The next one is Fedosia, which essentially mimics luteinizing hormone, and it basically signals testes to produce more testosterone. And the dosage is around 600 milligrams per day. Then I threw in vitamin D here because of its ability to, it's not a direct booster of testosterone, but what it does is it increases free testosterone and it again lowers sex hormone binding globulin. Essentially, what sex hormone binding globulin does in a nutshell is it tends to render testosterone ineffective. So that way, instead of the testosterone molecule getting to the tissue that it needs to, sex hormone binding globulin kind of occupies it, which makes it less effective. So there's a sweet spot. You don't want it to be non-existent, but you don't want it to overtake your ability to extract benefit from testosterone. And in subsequent videos, I'll get into the things that affect sex hormone binding globulin, but I can tell you that blood sugar, insulin sensitivity is also a huge determinant of what your sex hormone binding globulin is, and therefore blood sugar has a direct correlation to testosterone levels or blood sugar management. And this goes back to, again, primary hormone function, because that's where it governs it. Insulin, cortisol, and adrenaline are the ones that are the hormones that govern blood sugar management. So you can see, again, there's no way around this foundation, okay? So again, vitamin D, but with vitamin D, the goal here obviously is to strive to optimize vitamin D levels, but do not overload vitamin D too quickly as not to cause calcium concentrations to shift too quickly. Again, what vitamin D does, vitamin D essentially pulls calcium out of the tissue and into the blood plasma to then do its thing. However, if you start to overload on vitamin D too aggressively, this concentration gradient, it will essentially pull too much calcium out of tissue too quickly, and that can create other problems that I can get into later. But just from a high level, sometimes when you start to pull calcium out of tissues too quickly, you can do things like liberate dormant viruses, like one of them would being a herpes virus. That's one of the reasons why if you're ever in the sun for a prolonged period of time, oftentimes cold sores can pop up, because what happens is your body's producing so much vitamin D that you get too much calcium that gets pulled out, and it allows the virus to then proliferate and you get a flare up. Because what calcium does immunologically is it essentially walls off pathogens. So calcium has a walling off effect in terms of how the immune system works. So you see, if you have something like a virus or herpes virus, you can have it in your system, but you don't know it until you get a flare up. It's only when that virus gets liberated. So when there's not enough calcium to wall off that pathogen, you get a flare up. But I digress. So just giving you one of the options as well. So the next thing we can talk about is DHEA. Again, DHEA supports adrenal, brain, and obviously testosterone support. The typical dosages are around 25 to 100 milligrams a day. I always like to start conservative, especially with things such as hormones and potentially prohormones, just to understand how your body responds. You can always go up. So I just found that starting conservative is always a good way to go, just for accuracy and precision, right? And then something that is not a direct testosterone booster, but I believe is important to have potentially, is DIM, which is diindolylmethane. I can't think. DIM. Basically, what DIM does is it helps control any potential excessive aromatization, meaning that you don't want to have testosterone converting to estrogen at too high a rate. There is going to be some in everyone, but when it gets out of hand, that's when the negative symptoms of estrogen overload comes into play. So what DIM can do is almost can act like a symptom control nutrient to make sure that you don't over aromatize. And again, some of the symptoms of excessive aromatization, sore nipples, excess water retention, man boobs. Sometimes you're going to be holding excessive fat, particularly in the belly, even in around the hips and the thighs. So those are some of the signs that your body may be producing too much estrogen. And again, because estrogen and testosterone oppose each other, you could potentially use DIM to correct that ratio, and that's where you're going to get your testosterone boosting effect. But something I want you to understand though about DIM is that even if you are suffering from signs of high estrogen, I particularly wouldn't start something like DIM right away, because oftentimes what happens is when you start to boost your testosterone naturally through supplement, diet, and lifestyle, and these types of things, sometimes that natural increase in testosterone will provide enough of a correct effect to stave off the excessive estrogen symptoms. I hope that makes sense. So I would, if you're taking something like Tonga Ali and all the other back end stuff for like 4 to 6 weeks, and then you're starting to, and then if you still have those estrogen symptoms, that's probably when I would add in something like that. But if you're experiencing that, at that point, I would then start to probably look at deeper health implications such as liver function, overall gut function, because if your liver isn't efficient enough, you're still going to have hormone processing problems. So this is where, again, understanding how the full physical dominance blueprint comes into place to be able to give you that foundation. In other words, remember, pillar 2 of the physical dominance blueprint is organ health optimization and organ health fortification. So this is where, when you follow the foundational steps, your likelihood of running into landmines goes down. And that's why we're here. So that is the important thing that I wanted you to understand about DIM. Only use it strategically, because you don't want to totally shut down your estrogen, because that creates a whole nother problem in and of itself that I will get into in subsequent videos when I actually do speak about testosterone replacement therapy in particular, and different protocols and cycles and the actual pharmacology and pharmacopoeia of boosting testosterone. All right. So that is what I wanted to, let me just read this verbatim just to make sure I don't forget anything. So again, those are the symptoms. And again, even if you had these symptoms before taking any natural testosterone booster, again, I would wait 4 to 6 weeks before adding in the DIM, just repeating what I said. So just to shut it down, if this approach made sense and you would like help with executing these techniques at the highest level, you may want to submit an application to work with me with one-on-one coaching. I only take about 8 clients a year. So the clients who I do take on are given my full attention and are well taken care of. So if you're wanting to work at a higher level, there should be a link somewhere in the description. And that's pretty much it for today, guys. Again, I know we went super heavy into some detailed stuff, but again, there's no way around this if you want to build your testosterone naturally. Again, there's too many obstacles that we have to contend with when we don't have the luxury of exogenous TRT. So things have to be done strategically, things have to be done diligently, and things have to be done accurately. And the way you do that is by implementing the strategies that I have outlined here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.